I am excited to announce to you, to all of the members of Oak Cliff Baptist Church in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and to the larger community of the River Valley, that our church is going to be reopening for Sunday worship on May the 17th. The doors are going to open at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then if everything goes well, we will begin the service at 10:30, which is our custom. Now, this is something that all of us have been yearning for a long time, and I know that we're very excited. We're all looking forward to this time. But as we move toward this time, it's very important that we have some instructions regarding the restrictions that have been put in place. We want to come together. We want to be together. God's Word teaches us to be together, that worship is something that is a corporate exercise. We're to be together. But in light of COVID-19, there are some things that we're going to have to do that are very, very different. We've been seeing the recent trend in the new COVID-19 data as we are seeing a decrease in the number of active cases. We're very encouraged by that. We hope that that continues. But it is absolutely essential that we be very careful and that we observe the recommended guidelines that have been made necessary by this virus. You know, we want everyone in the church to be safe and to stay healthy. Now, I know that some of us have had questions about whether all of the restrictive guidelines have been necessary. But the truth is that for almost all of us at Oak Cliff, we are not qualified to make sweeping judgments like that about this virus. We all have an opinion, and some of us tend to armchair quarterback on things like this. We think that we know better than those who are actually qualified to make judgments on viruses like COVID-19 and how serious it really is. But as far as Oak Cliff is concerned, as we move towards reopening, we are going to play it very safe. We're going to make sure that everybody is as safe as we can make them so. We're going to follow the recommended guidelines that have been put out by the Arkansas Department of Health and our governor and his task force. Now, there are actually some critically important theological reasons for our following the strict guidelines that our government has given us. Some people don't think that that's the case, but it is. And first of all, in Romans chapter 13, God says that we are to submit to the governing authorities. Romans 13 verses 1 and 2 says, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment." Now, when the government is clearly acting in the best interests of everyone, as it is now doing during this COVID-19 crisis, we should submit to the instructions given to us by those governing agencies, including the CDC and the Arkansas Department of Health. Some have argued that churches that have closed have been guilty of neglecting our assembling together, referring to Hebrews chapter 10, verse 24 and 25, which says, and this is what Hebrews says, "And let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." Now, when this passage speaks of neglecting, it is speaking of a sinful disregard, having no legitimate reason to be absent from the assembly of the church. But in the present crisis, we are not neglecting. We're neglecting nothing, actually. Instead, we have been protecting. We are protecting the vulnerable among us, those who are high risk, and we're doing so in submission to the authorities, which is a biblical way for us to act. It is a temporary situation. We are not sinfully neglecting our assembling. There is much that we do not know about COVID-19, and the information seems to change from day to day, and it is very confusing. But we do know that the medical community, those who are most qualified to make such judgments, are taking the pandemic very, very seriously. In regard to such a threat, Proverbs 22, verse 3 says this: "The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it." We don't want anybody to suffer for it. So we're taking every precaution. So as we meet together on May the 17th, out of our great affection for one another, because we love each other and want to protect each other, desiring to protect particularly those who are vulnerable to infection, and also in submission to our government and the regulations that they have given to us, we are going to follow the strict guidelines that our governor and the Arkansas Department of Health have given to us, and we're going to do that as much as possible, as much as we're able. And so I want to walk you through very quickly what those guidelines are and what you can expect on the 17th when we reopen for worship. It will not be business as usual, so you need to be prepared for that. Now, first of all, number one, we will continue to record our services so that those who need to stay at home because they're high risk will be able to continue to worship with us through the digital media. So we will live stream the service on Facebook during the service on May 17th, and then we will later post that video to YouTube so that others can watch it anytime. Secondly, and this is very important, there are some of you, members of Oak Cliff, who should not attend the service on the 17th. I know you don't like to hear that, and I don't like to say it, but it is true. Those of you who are considered to be high risk and particularly vulnerable to the virus should stay home of your own accord. This is one of the top recommendations of the health department. The definition of an individual at high risk is as follows: those who are 65 or more years old, or have underlying health conditions, including high blood pressure, chronic lung disease, diabetes, severe obesity, asthma, or immunocompromising conditions. Those are the ones who are at high risk. If you have had a recent infection or a surgery or cancer treatment or things like that, then you should choose to stay at home for your own safety. You are in a high-risk category. Thirdly, if you have had a fever of 100.4 or higher in the past 2 days, that would be the 2 days prior to the 17th, if you have a cough, shortness of breath, a sore throat, a new loss of taste or smell or other symptoms typical of COVID-19, or if you have had known exposure to someone with COVID-19 in the past 14 days, you will not be allowed to enter our worship service. Now, that sounds harsh, but it is very important. We're not going to check everyone's temperature at the door like they do when you go to the doctor. We're not going to do that. But we are going to ask you to honor this guideline. If someone shows up on the 17th who is coughing or shows other visible signs of illness, our ushers will be prepared to check your temperature, and we may have to ask you to stay home for the safety of everyone else. And if you love your brothers and sisters at Oak Cliff and you don't want to expose them, then out of love for them, please stay home if you're showing any symptoms or if you've been exposed. Number 4, no one will be admitted without a face covering. We are going to be very strict about this. The face covering is not so much for your safety as it is for the safety and the reassurance, the peace of mind of those who would be sitting around you. The only exceptions to this rule will be the children who are 10 years of age or younger. Children under 2, by the way, are prohibited by the CDC from wearing any face covering. So the really very small children are not to wear one at all, but 10 and under are not required to wear a face covering. And those who are leading in worship, now this is a directive from the governor's task force, Lyndall and I must maintain, we don't have to wear a mask while we're preaching or leading in the singing, but we must maintain 12 feet from the congregation while we do so. We're not going to make any other exceptions for the face covering rule. So if you're not comfortable wearing a mask, then we appeal to you on the basis of your love for your brothers and sisters in Christ to agree to wear a mask on that day if you want to be in the worship service with us. If you still cannot bring yourself to wear a mask, then you will not be allowed to enter the service. You can watch the service on Facebook at home. If you do not have a mask, we are working to acquire a small supply of masks so that we could provide one for you if you don't have one. Otherwise, if you have one, please wear it. So this is very important. It doesn't protect you as much as it protects those around you. Number 5, we are to maintain social distancing during the service, meaning that we must all sit 6 feet apart. Now, the exception to that is families who live together. A family can sit together if they are a family who lives together. But the rest of us must keep our distance. This also applies not only while we're in the building, but also while we're outside the building on the sidewalks or in the parking lot. If we gather for fellowship outside, the guideline is that we are to maintain that 6-foot rule, and we're also to keep our masks on. So in order to accommodate social distancing, we will all enter the auditorium through the glass front doors. That's a little different. We're going to have the side doors closed off at the beginning of the service, so we all have to enter through the front doors. We're going to maintain social distancing as we enter into the auditorium. When you enter, you will not be allowed to gather in the aisles for fellowship, as is our custom. This is going to be hard for us, but you're to go ahead and find your seat and take your place in your seat. And then when the service is concluded, we will exit pew by pew, filing out. At that time, we will have the side doors open, and you can leave through whatever door you want to. And ushers will be stationed at the exits to help everyone maintain that 6-foot distancing. Now, when you enter and begin making your way to your seat, you will find that every other pew has been taped off. This is for your safety. If the pew that you are used to sitting on is taped off, please do not remove the tape. Find a seat near where you're used to sitting and sit there. And then once you're seated, we ask that you remain in your seat. And remember that admittance to the building will be first come, first serve. If the building fills up and there are no more safe seats available, then we're going to close the doors. So that's unfortunate, but that's the way we have to do it. Number 6, we are to refrain from touching one another. There's to be no handshaking, no touching or embracing, no hugging. We would also discourage I've heard people saying they've gone to elbow bumping. Don't do that, because to do that, you have to violate the 6-foot rule. In addition to this, we will not be passing the offering plates during the service. Instead, we offer you a number of different options. You can continue to give online or mail in your offering and worship through giving that way. Or we will have boxes placed at the entrance at the beginning of the service, and as you come into the service, you can put your offering into the box at that time, if you so choose. Regarding the use of hymnals, we have determined that it should be perfectly safe for you to use the hymnal that is in front of where you're sitting. There should be no danger in doing that. They're clean. Number 7, I will give an invitation as always, but I will not ask you to meet me in the foyer at the end of the service if you need to speak to me regarding a decision that you've made. Instead, I will ask you to go ahead and exit with everyone and simply remain outside. And then at the end of the service, I will come outside, in particular the front entrance, and then we can speak there and maintain a safe distance. Number 8, due to safety concerns, we will not have a nursery. So parents, please be aware of that. And then finally, we do plan to have sanitizer stations at each of the exits for your convenience. So feel free to use those on your way in or on your way out. There should be plenty for everyone to use. Now, we know that these measures seem extreme, they seem harsh, but this is an extraordinary time. This is not a normal time. Lyndall and I met with the deacons on a Wednesday evening, May the 6th, and we went over all of these guidelines, and we were all in complete agreement that this is the way it needs to be as we begin to move back together. We're praying that there won't be a resurgence of or an uptick of the virus as we begin to ease up on restrictions like this, because that would force us all back into isolation again. We want to be able to continue meeting. So for the time being, we must observe every precaution that we can take to protect everyone and stay safe. We're doing this because we love each other, and we want to do everything that we can to protect one another from this very serious virus. We all long for everything to be normal. I do. I know you do. And so we believe that that time will come, but it's not now. And so for now, we have to do these things. So rather than placing our focus on the restrictions, I'd like to ask that you think of it this way. Let's look at Sunday, May the 17th, as a great time of joy as we're able to come back together. It will be a wonderful time as we are able to be together and just to see each other. The ministry of presence, someone has called it. Just being together. It will be such a joyous time. I look forward to our reunion, and I hope you do too.